Good evening, everybody, or afternoon. Welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk Around the Horn. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with my co-host, Louis Adiowai. So we're proud to bring on former Tampa Chamberlain head coach, as well as Hillsborough Community College, a man that wears a lot of Tampa hats, and USF head coach, K.R. Lombardia. And welcome to the broadcast, K.R. Glad to have you aboard.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be here.
Well, glad to have you back. Anyway, so obviously, you know, this is a show, baseball, and you've been around it for a long time, so we'll just go to some different interesting things, and we can talk about them. What are your comments about the cheating scandal that's rocked the Houston Astros, Boston Red Sox? Pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, it's, stealing signs has been around forever, but not with technology, and that almost... it's cheating. It's just out-and-out cheating, and there's no room for it in the game. I mean, if you're going to do it where you're peeking around or, you're peeking back, but, if you get caught by the other team, and they're going to drill you. And this one was a little bit different. They've stolen signs for years in the big leagues. If you look at the Red Sox in their left field where they still had that mechanical scoreboard. I remember reading years ago that they had a scorekeeper out there that had binoculars, and he would stick his hand out to signal breaking pitch or fastball to the hitters. And I think everybody pretty much knew that. And there was a lot of the old stadiums that had those mechanical scoreboards. They'd have somebody out there. In fact, there was something in the Tampa Times the other day about Tony La Russa doing the same thing in Busch Memorial Stadium, where they had a little light in center field, and they had a guy with binoculars looking, and they flashed the light when it was a breaking pitch. Now, whether that's true or not, I just read it one time. I know Tony. I don't think he'd admit it to me, but, I wouldn't put it by anybody doing anything anymore. It's a big money game, and the thing is, Scott, if you're in the old days where players stayed on the same team forever, you can almost get away with it. But today, where players change teams like you and I change clothes, guys can go to another team and say, hey, this is what they're doing, and this is what the guy did from the A's. So I think it's pretty hard to do that nowadays. And they got away with it for a couple of years before they got exposed. So, and I'm sure the Red Sox did the same thing. He's the brain behind that. So, yeah, I mean, it's not good. It hurt the game. It's almost as bad as the 1919 Black Sox scandal, and it's not. There's no place for it in baseball.
Do you think that they should put an asterisk next to that World Series championship? I don't see baseball ever taking it away, but an asterisk maybe.
No, they won't take it away. Manfred, we were talking the other day, a bunch of us, and saying the players should probably be suspended if they were part of it, and if they did, the Astros wouldn't have a team. They'd have to bring up their AAA team to play, and I don't know if they can do that. I mean, it's. I wouldn't want to be in Manfred's position because whatever he does, people are going to criticize. I know that David Ortiz said that Manfred did whatever he could do, but of course David Ortiz is an ex-Red Sox, so what's he going to say? I know the Yankee players are upset. I know that the fans are livid at spring training. They're just grossing out the Astros players, and I think they've been hit 7 times in 7 or 8 games already. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll stop in the regular season because unless they get a big lead, I don't think, you don't want to put people on base. I mean, if the opposing team has a big lead on the Astros, yeah, they may drill somebody, but first inning 0-0 late in the game, game's tight. They're not going to hit the players on purpose. I don't think so.
Well, you're right. During spring training, they don't care. During regular season, they do care when there's a lot more on the line.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll ever be done again. I think now they've basically. I don't think those guys will ever get another job in baseball. The guys that were fired.
Yeah, right. Luno and A.J. Hinch. Yeah, I think you're right.
Get a job again.
I agree.
So, it's sad.
I mean, honestly, the way Manfred handled the scandal was piss poor. Honestly, he can't go back, obviously, and change it. Although I think it presents a very poor moral dilemma when you kind of just say, come out at the writer awards and say we're not going to punish the players because they're provided immunity for telling the truth. That would be like you committing, or anybody committing a heinous crime, going to the police and saying, hey, I committed this terrible crime, but I'm telling you about it, so don't punish me. That's kind of like what it reads like to me.
Right.
At the end of the day, I mean, it was a player-driven scheme. We knew this from the beginning. So the idea that Alex Bregman, who despite what he did is still one of the more exciting players in baseball, Altuve, Springer, Beltran and Cora, the fact that they're still in baseball in some capacity at this point is astounding to me. I think Manfred, he went into this very scared, and he was scared that he was going to be scrutinized for any of the decisions that he made. But I think that's the biggest takeaway. A $5 million fine to Jim Crane is like somebody going to my house and throwing away my milk. I can go to the store and buy more milk. I mean, Jim Crane's a billionaire. I don't think $5 million means anything to him. I just, and I have a conspiracy that I pitched on the Sports Exchange, a show that Scott primarily does, a couple of weeks ago, where I thought that Crane may have maybe even paid Manfred off. But again, I'm not going to, start something going on here. There's just something there that's really murky and fishy that I don't really agree with. I just think this was handled horribly by baseball, and you know what it is. Baseball's history is built on imperfection, as any sport is, so you really can't go back and change it. You're not going to take it away the way that the NCAA did Paterno's wins. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. All right, let's go on to a new rule change that was implemented this year called the 3-batter minimum. You told me yesterday when we talked you weren't too thrilled about it.
I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. And you want to go the lefty-lefty, righty-righter matchup, and that almost takes it away from you, and it takes away some of the strategy of the game. As an amateur coach back in the day, we weren't real big on lefty-lefty, righty-righty because, you can't go to your bullpen and pull somebody out that's really, you're not going to always have great people in your bullpen, especially at the amateur level. Now, college baseball's gotten a little better where pitching staffs are a lot deeper. But back in the day, in the 80s, when I coached in college, we didn't have that. So we didn't go to that. But I can understand in the big leagues, and they do it in college now more because they have deeper staffs. You want to bring one guy in to face a left-hander. The Yankees, where they had Gossage and Sparky Lau, they did it many times where they would go lefty-lefty and then bring in Gossage righty-righty or vice versa. And I think that the guys that are making those rules, I don't know what they're thinking about. I know they want to speed the game up, and that's one way to do it. But I don't think that's one of the ways they need to do. I think that's wrong. I think it's crazy.
Well,
that's just me.
Well, what I think about the whole thing is I think Manfred's trying. I don't know whether it's going to work. As I remember back in the days when you and I would see relievers go 2 or 3 innings, and all of a sudden the specialty specialist came into play. So is he trying to bring back some of the longer appearances through relievers? I mean, the Milwaukee Brewers, for instance, try to push Josh Hader at least 2 innings if they can, give him a little time off and so forth. So I used to like the 2 or 3 inning reliever. We'll never see that again. But, the 3-batter minimum, does that come anywhere close to that is anybody's guess. What do you think?
Well, analytics have taken up so much of the game. We had pitching charts. Now, we didn't have the software back then that they have now where you can go in after a game and plug it into your software, and it's going to spit out what the batter's tendencies are. You had to look at it and decipher it yourself. You'd have to look and have it was manual. You did it with paper. You didn't do it with the software. And so that has taken up such a big part of the game. First guy to do that was Tony La Russa. And then it's every big league club does it. If you look at Moneyball, that's analytical. You're spending this much money for a guy where you spend this much little and get 2 players, that do this. And they look at a lot of statistics. A lot of guys that are running that aren't even baseball people. They're they're statistic people. And I think that's taken up such a big part of the game that it almost changes it. I'm not a big believer in that. I think that they talk about launch angle and launch speed and all that garbage. I think that's just it's too scientific, and the game isn't that complicated.
That's true.
I think that they're trying to get into that now, and I think that, and I understand the lefty-lefty, right? When you have good people, I'm not going to throw a bad left-handed pitcher against a good left-handed hitter if his pitcher's bad, just because he throws on the left side. Not in amateur ball. Pro ball is a little different.
Okay. All right. They nowadays they have mound visits. I believe they have 4, but they had 5 and 6 for a period of time. What are your thoughts about controlling the mound visits to about 4 per game?
I think that's another thing. I think all that goes down to speeding up the game, and what's going to do is going to force you to make changes without going to the mound. You know, and you can go around that if you don't want to talk to the guy. You can send your catcher out, or you can he can step off back to the mound, and the shortstop can come in and say something to him. I mean, there's not a whole lot of conversation going. I never had a whole lot of conversation with my pitchers. If he was, if he mechanically he wasn't, I could yell something from the dugout to him, like, you're overstriding, get on top of your curveball. They understood what I was saying. But to go out there just to slow them down, that I don't think that's going to hurt them. I think there's ways around it to slow the game down. And if you want to make a change, you can make the change from the dugout if you really want to. If that's not going to count as a visit, just run them out there. Say you're in from the dugout. Pitcher calls timeout and leaves the game, and another guy comes in. You may see that, and that'll save their mound trip. So, but that speeds up the game. It doesn't. And that to me is the reason they're doing the 4 trips. I don't think it's necessary, though.
Yeah, I agree.
They're trying to change the game too much.
Yeah, I don't like too much change. Arguably the most pure game on the planet.
Absolutely.
I think you just tinker with something that's good. I can see where if there were a lot of deficiencies, but baseball doesn't have a lot of them.
And then if you want to go back to the 3 batter minimum for a second, think about this, Will Harris only faced 2 batters in that World Series game in Game 7 when Howie Kendrick hits the home run off of him. And he was laboring. If you put him out there for a 3rd batter, and I know the rule extends to say that you can come in with 2 outs, get 1 hitter to end the inning, and you're good. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen because this rule is being instituted. There's going to be one pitcher who's primarily a specialist. And say Jerry Blevins, who's in spring training right now with the team, cracks a roster, and he's a lefty specialist for the most of his career. He gets hurt after facing 3 batters. Then you're going to raise even more questions. And personally, again, you talked about pace of play. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I don't even think it's really going to make it change that much. It's going to knock off, 3 minutes? Were you trying to just make these games an hour and 59 minutes the way they were at the turn of the century? I don't think you're ever going to get back to that. That's just because baseball 100 years ago compared to baseball now is a lot different. And you know what? You have advertising and, all these 8 companies trying to get their product out there via commercials.
Sure.
Capitalism, in a sense, has kind of hurt the integrity of the sport, but to limit the mound visits and to, and as a coach, KR, I believe you would agree that, you don't want somebody to tell you how to coach. You're in control of your own team, and I think as a coach, and look, this is somebody who's never coached before, it's all about hitting the right buttons and making sure that they click most of the time, and that's how you're going to be successful. To tell Mike Matheny in Kansas City how he needs to use a young pitching staff is wrong, and to the same way you would tell a veteran manager how to use his pitching staff. It's just weird that they're policing the game in that way. But again, I mean, that's a conversation you can have for hours and hours on end.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about moving the mound back. Are you opposed to, or would you rather they keep it the same?
That's crazy, Scott. They're going to do that in that independent league, I think. Can't remember the name of it. I want to say Pioneer League.
I think the Atlantic is where they usually end up making
Atlantic League, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Here's the thing. We talked about years ago when Will Chamberlain was dominating basketball and the big guys were dominating the game. When you don't see a center with his back to the basket anymore, and they were going to raise the basket to 12 feet. And they did some experimental games and found out it doesn't really affect it because you're still going to have a guy that's 7'3", and it's 2 feet bigger, but he's still taller than the other guys. I think one of the reasons is everybody's throwing 95. I was at a spring training game the other day, and the Yankees, not the Yankees, the Nationals had a little right-handed guy, couldn't be more than 6 feet an inch, probably 200 pounds. I mean, everything he's throwing is 95. Everything he's throwing fastball is 95. And guys are throwing a lot harder now, but there's still adjustments. And I think that's what they're concerned with, that people are throwing harder. And that's why. And they're going to throw harder. But I think that leads to the fact that a lot of guys are getting arm injuries because I think they throw too hard. Mm-hmm. And they strain their bodies. And you'll see, you never heard of Tommy John surgery till Tommy John. You never heard of torn rotator cuffs covering till Steve Busby. And I think that that's what it is. I think people are still going to throw hard. They're still going to hurt their arm. I think one of the reasons is they don't pace themselves, and they throw at too young of an age. They throw too many. They throw too much when they're young. You're seeing 12-year-old kids, 13-year-old kids, Tommy John surgery. They're throwing too much. This travel ball stuff, and these are the kids that are in big leagues now. The young kids, they're getting hurt. Severino gets hurt again, and now he's out for the year with Tommy John surgery. Early in the spring, what happened? Did he do something in the off season? Did he play in winter ball? Did he throw too many innings? I mean, your arm is not built to do what it does, what they're doing, and they're strengthening it. I know the weight training is a lot better and all that, but throwing so much is what's causing these injuries. And they want to throw 100 miles an hour. When I was at Alonzo's, the athletic director, we had Jose Fernandez, poor young man that got killed in that boating accident, and Jose used to talk to me every day. And I remember him coming to me and saying, "Hey, I touched 100 on the gun yesterday." I said, "You're too concerned about that. That's why and he hurt his arm his first year up. You remember? He was out. And he's a hardhead. He just wanted to throw. I touched 100. I touched 100. I said, "Are you getting people out?" He said, "You can get people out throwing 80 if you throw the ball in the right place." And I think you're too worried about velocity and not worried about location, movement, and changing his speed. I'm from the Johnny Sain school. Work fast, change speeds, throw strikes. And going back to the game, speeding up the game, none of my pitchers walked around the mound great pitch. They took the ball and I said, "We're going to pitch fast. We're going to pitch fast. We're not going to let him get in the box and get set. We're going to take the ball, get on the mound, get the sign, and pitch." And that's the way we're going to pitch. And I had kids that had never done that before. And then after they did it, they said, "Hey, I really like to pitch fast." You're damn right you do. Because now you've got him off balance. He doesn't have time to think between pitches. You're coming right at him. And we're calling our pitches, and you're getting on the mound, and you're getting the rubber pitching. And I think that speeds up the game. And it also helps your pitchers because they work fast, and they get the hitters off stride. But that speeds up the game, too. But I think the arm injuries are stemmed from throwing too much and throwing too many breaking pitches at a young age. You should throw a curveball till you're 14. And I had a thing we had something at Centennial Park the other day here in Ybor City. It was for the baseball museum, and they had myself and a couple other coaches, retired coaches up there. Well, John Cromley was there from Steinbrenner, and we were talking about kids playing year round, and I said throwing breaking pitches at 14, throwing breaking pitches. I'm sorry, at 12. I did a paper at Mississippi State when I was going to graduate school in 1975 and proved, without a shadow of a doubt, a kid shouldn't throw a curveball like he's 14, and he shouldn't throw more than 1 or 2 innings a week in Little League, and they were letting him throw 6 innings. Just, 8 years ago, Little League's finally gone to a pitch count now, or 80 pitches or something, I don't know, whatever it is. It took them all that time to figure it out after I did a paper and showed it to Little League Baseball in Williamsport through Bobby Rodriguez here in town. I said, "Look, you need to take this and show this to them." And he said, they won't ever go for that. I said, "They won't." I said, "They're not concerned about kids' safety and kids' health," and they weren't. It didn't seem like they were until recently. And I think that these kids coming up now are products of that. They're the ones getting hurt. You never saw Warren Spahn get hurt. You never saw Whitey Ford. Poor Koufax had arthritis on it. He had to get a shot. But you never saw Don Drysdale have arm problems. People like that, because they didn't pitch all year round. And they didn't throw curveballs when they were little, probably. And they threw fastballs to strengthen their arm. But they didn't overthrow. So I just think it's a combination of a lot of things.
All right, Lewis has a question.
And moving the mound back is not going to help.
Lewis has a question for you. Go ahead.
Well, I think the moving the mound back is more baseball's subconscious way of saying we want more offense, which you really don't need anymore after last year with another year of record home run totals. I mean, Mark Burley's a guy that comes to mind when I think of a pitcher who had a very successful career. He fit all the criteria you just stated. He worked fast. I believe he was one of the quickest pitchers, less than 20 seconds between pitches. He didn't throw hard, and he relied on cutting and sinking the ball, like Johnny saying, Spahn saying, "Pray for rain" if you want to get historical with it. 1948 Braves. But I think what I was going to ask you is, as a high school coach, and I know you did it for a very long time, how did you work with pitchers in terms of strength and conditioning? Because when I played high school baseball, our coach's MO was you're going to throw 5 times a week, and then you had a doubleheader on Saturdays. How would you work with your starters, your relievers, just in high school as far as like arm conditioning goes, just to make sure that they stay healthy during the season?
In our off season, we had a weight program. We did more light weights with our pitchers and high reps, and our hitters. We always stretched. I had a rule, and I got this from Ron Polk at Mississippi State. We did a stretch program that kids had never. I've never seen it. I was the first one to bring it into this town, and nobody had ever seen it. Before you walked into the bullpen to throw, you loosened up with, and they make machines for them now. They've come up, and I wish I had invented it. I'd have made a lot of money. I got a broomstick, and I cut it, and you put it behind your back, and you would stretch your arm, your pitching arm, and push your arm up and hold it. We would do some stretching exercise with that stick. Then we took an old inner tube, bicycle inner tube, put it against a fence in our bullpen, and we stretched 360 degrees our arm, and we did it. And before kid picked up the ball, that's what he did. I never had any arm trouble. I never had arm trouble as a pitching coach in college, ever, or high school. Never, because we stretched completely before we walked out and we threw. And 20 seconds between pitches, our pitchers never took more than 10, 12 seconds between a pitch. Because we got the ball and we threw. We got the ball and we pitched. We got the ball and we pitched. And they'd step out on us, and that's fine. You can do that. You're going to have to get in there eventually, and you can't do it too much, your umpire won't let you. But we did a lot of stretching with our arms, and we did a lot of running. We didn't run sprints. We ran distance, because sprints are for speed. I want distance for longevity and to get yourself in shape. And the guy that really told me about that was my cousin, who was a physician, and he was a sports physician in Rockford, Illinois. And he told me, don't run your pitchers sprints, run them distance. You just have them where they can run and run and run. You let them run after practice, or if you want to do it during practice, because most pitchers don't hit, but let them run a couple of miles a day. And that really helped, because you get your legs in shape, and Tom Seaver proved that many years ago. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we stretched our arms. I mean, they did not. Kids couldn't understand it. What? I said, you're going to do it before you pick up a ball. I'm just telling you that. That's where we're going to do it. I've never done it before. So, well, that doesn't mean you've been right. So, knock on wood, I never had. And if a kid ever had a little bit of a twinge in his arm, we didn't let him pitch. He didn't pitch the day before the game. He didn't pitch the day after the game. The second day after, he'd lightly tossed and he'd long tossed. Then he'd have a bullpen session. Then a day off. Then he'd pitch. We would give him 5 days. And sometimes we would pitch with 3 days rest, depending on the pitch, how many pitches he threw. But we monitored how much our kids threw, and that got us to the point where we never had any arm trouble. And I was pitching coach at South Florida and Hillsborough Community College, and I coached my own pitchers at Chamberlain, and I coached my pitchers in summer ball, and I never had a problem.
Okay. All right, let's move on to robot umpires.
I like that. I have a good friend, Alan Granda, who's we grew up together and played Little League together, and he was saying, and you look at games, umpires are horrible on the plate. I was watching a college game this afternoon, and I'm just, my God, it's like an amoeba, the strike zone. I was watching a game the other day. I watch a lot of college baseball because I have a Fire Stick and I get the ESPN, and I'm a college baseball nut, so I watch as much college baseball as I can. And they're just bad. The umpires are they're not getting any better. And I think that if we have the technology, let's use it. You're still going to need an umpire behind the plate, check swings and things like that. But balls and strikes, if they've come up with a system they had one many, many years ago when Yogi Berra was coming up, and I remember reading it in one of the millions of books I read. And what would happen, though, Yogi would stick his glove into the strike zone, and it would go off as a strike. So it wasn't a perfected deal. But now, with the technology we have, they can do it from center field when they follow the ball, I imagine. I mean, our technology is 100 times better than it was in the 50s. So I think that we've got it. We need to use it. We do replay on base running plays or catches in the outfield. We do replays. Let's use the technology we've got for balls and strike. It'll make the game a better game. Purists, some older purists will say no because there's always mistakes, but those mistakes can cost a lot of money.
Right, I'm sure. Well, and you talk about instant replay. They talk about 30 seconds and 20 seconds. So, when you talk about that, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that a little bit more in terms of whether it should be expanded or not?
Well, I think 20 seconds is perfect. I mean, that's plenty of time to play a pitch. I think like I said, my pitches never took more than 10, 12 seconds. We worked on that in our bullpen, and we worked on it in simulated games, and we worked on it in inter squad games. And I just think if 20 seconds is plenty. That's more than enough. They've been doing it in amateur ball, and not amateur. I'm sorry, in some of the minor leagues, they've already experimented with that, and there's been no complaints from what I've seen. Maybe there is some out there that I haven't read about, but the only problem, the only guy that would cause a problem with that would be like Mike Hargrove stepping out after every pitch. Well, you got to stop that crap too. Hargrove was the human rain delay. Every pitch, he'd step out, he'd adjust everything, and you don't need to do that, but he did, and they let him do that. But if they don't let him do that, he's not going to be able to do that. So that would speed the game up. And I agree with these people. The games take too long. I mean, I really do. But I think that if they do little things, but don't change the game by saying you can't do this or you can't do that. You have to throw 3 hitters or, I think that's crazy. I just think that's insanity. But I wonder who's making the rules up there. Is Manfred? He's not a baseball guy. I'm sure they have a rules committee, and I hope they're just not owners. Like in the NFL, they got general managers. Most of those guys were football people. I think one of the big things in baseball is they're making people that are upper echelon, like Sternberg. Those guys aren't baseball people. They're owners, and they think they know the game, and they know the statistics and the analytics, but they don't know the little intricacies of the game. And I think that hurts if they're the ones making the rules. You got to make baseball people make the rules. Managers, guys like Joe Madden would be great. I think Torrey is good. Anybody, Tony La Russa, Piniella, the older guys. They can make the rules. They can put them as a rules committee. But don't let these guys that are just analytical people make rules, because they're not. They don't know what they're doing.
All right, KR, I want to go back over the pitching injuries for a moment, if I may. Okay, obviously we know how you handled it as a high school coach, but do you think that enough precautions are being handled at the major league level? I see nowadays a lot of teams are actually assigning an athletic trainer to their spring training quarters and working with these guys year round, because I've never seen that before. Like, for example, one of my good friends, Kevin Rand, was assigned full-time to Lakeland. Of course, it doesn't hurt. That's where he lives, and that's where the Tigers are at. But do you think enough is being addressed along the lines at the major league, minor league levels, that these spring training facilities are not just spring training facilities, but they're actual team headquarters?
Yeah, I'm thinking that they have to have. I would have an orthopedic surgeon on my staff, and I would think they have them. You can't fly your player into Dr. Andrews in Birmingham all the time. I think you have to have an orthopedic surgeon. When I did this paper in 1975 at Mississippi State, Starkville, Mississippi is not a very big place, but I found 3 orthopedic surgeons that were associated with the team that I could talk to, and they showed me stuff, and that dealt with in baseball. And so if Starkville, Mississippi can have it, I mean, Major League Baseball can have an orthopedic surgeon at their beck and call, I would think, all the time, especially in spring training. And then when they go back home, the Rays would be here in Tampa or St. Pete. We have great orthopedic surgeons in Tampa. I'm sure there's great ones in New York. I'm sure there's great ones in every city. And I would definitely use them. And I think the athletic trainers now, I don't know if you've seen, I have not seen it, but I know some athletic trainers. Ask them what they have to go through to pass that athletic training test now. It is immensely more difficult than it was, say, 40 years ago. When I was going, 50 years ago when I was going to school. I know a good friend of mine, a graduate a few years behind me, it's a trainer here, and Tim Coker. And Tim's a great trainer, and he keeps up with everything, so he's not. In fact, he's a trainer for HCC. Now, he retired from the school system. But he says the training test now, to pass the training test is like almost like a medical exam, like a MedCat. He said it's immensely harder. So you're going to get young trainers now that really know what they're doing compared to the old days. And I think I think that they do that. I think if they don't do that, they are cheating themselves. I just don't understand why. I said it before, why there's so many arm injuries. I think they're overthrowing. I don't think a pitcher that pitched in the big leagues needs to go back. They used to play in the Caribbean League all the time, and I don't know how they did it. But I think the pitchers strain themselves to hit that. They worry too much about the gun. and they like with Jose Fernandez, I want to hit 100. Why? 96 is fine. 95 with the easy motion. You start overthrowing. What he did is after his rookie year, he hit with a line drive, I believe it was, and he had to alter his motion a little bit, and he hurt his arm in doing that. And when you're trying to throw that hard and you strain your body, you strain it to the peak where a breaking point, and it breaks because the body's not. Actually, softball players can throw 2 games a day because they're throwing underhand. That's the way your arm is built.
That's true.
When it's throwing up on top, you're not really built for that. And I think that you have to have an orthopedic. I would have an orthopedic. If I owned the team, I'd have an orthopedic surgeon. If I had to pay him, $1 million a year to be with my team during the season, I'd pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes, I wanted to make a comment. I think you talk about Fernandez, and I believe, he did go to school down there in Tampa, Alonzo High School, if I'm not saying the full name correctly. But one of the beautiful things about him is, he was throwing so hard, but he had such great command of his off-speed stuff. The changeup was there.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, how often and this is, I guess this is more like a contextual question for you. Of all the pitchers that you saw, in all your time that you spent coaching down there, where does Jose Fernandez rank among just pure stuff? I mean, we know how great of a person he was. The decisions he made, obviously, are something that, hang over a lot of baseball fans and just Marlins fans in general, too. But among all the pitchers you saw, where does he rank in your mind among just pure stuff and character, everything, pretty much?
The best ever. When I was an athletic director at Sickles High School, and in education, they move you around to certain places. And my last year, I was 1 year away from retirement. They moved me to Alonzo because there were some things that needed to be done over there, and I was a veteran AD, so they brought me over there. And the principal and I were very, very good friends, and I knew the baseball.
You there?
Everybody knows everybody, especially if you're either Italian, Spanish, or Cuban. We all know each other. Anyway, I went to the field the first time just to see Jose pitch in the spring. I didn't go in the fall because I was doing other things. And I went to the bullpen and watched him in a bullpen session. After he threw 10 pitches, I said, he's the best I've ever seen. He's the best I've seen in Tampa at the high school level. I think he's 3 years away from being in the big leagues. And I was wrong. 2 years. He had the best slider I've ever seen for 18 years old. It was nasty. I mean, it was absolutely the nastiest slider I've seen. And it was a true slider, not a swerve.
Kind of like Kerry Wood's, though, no? Kerry Wood threw a slurve, but Fernandez had the velocity, but he also had just the actual break at the end because the way it ran away from righties is like, it made Doc Gooden's curveball look, almost like childlike.
He threw a slider at 90. He threw a slider at 90. That's a lot of guys throw a slider. If they're 93 or 94, they're a slider at 85. He's throwing a slider at 92, and it explodes at the plate. I just thought there isn't many high school kids can hit this guy, and he got beat 1-0 by Plant on a fluke. But I think that's the only game he lost his senior year. And I'll tell you, he's a great kid. What happened to him, what he's being accused of, has been proven. It hasn't come out that wasn't true. There was he did not knowingly take cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
I know his lawyer very well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's video of that bar, and he turned around and somebody slipped something into his drink.
Ooh.
And it's on video. Why hasn't it been brought out? I don't know. I think there's still a lawsuit pending.
I never heard that.
They said they found cocaine in his system when they did the autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jose intimately. He wasn't eligible his senior year. He was actually his 5th year, and as the athletic director, I had to make the appeal to him at Bradenton first in the district, and then later on in Gainesville. And I got him eligible, and I got to know him very, very well. He'd come to my office every day, because he found out I was a baseball coach at one time, and I'm Spanish too, and he was just a great kid. What a personality, and a pretty good student, believe it or not. He's one. We have ESOL. When I was growing up in 1960, the first Cubans came over, and they didn't have ESOL, but all the Cubans learned English in a year, and it helped that we spoke Spanish too, because we were Spanish descent or early Cuban descent, And nowadays they have to have ESOL because they need help. Well, Jose spoke perfect English with an accent in 1 year, and he passed the FCAT the first time. Okay, we got kids that are American that live here all their life can't pass the FCAT the first time they come. They take it, and he passed it right away. Smart. What's funny about him? He wasn't very good in math, and he was pretty good in English. And most Cuban kids that came here in the '60s were a year ahead of us, and they take algebra in Cuba years ago. They take it in like 7th grade, 6th grade. Now they don't, and he just wasn't very good at math. And I said, you could have been my son. I wasn't very good at math either, but he struggled. But he was great in English. So he knew history. He knew American history. I mean, he was really a pretty smart kid, and just a great kid. Mm-hmm. I loved him to death. And he went through some real adversity to get here. I mean, he had to save his mother, who was drowning off the coast of Mexico when they came over. Because he went from Havana to he didn't go to the Key West route. He went to Mexico the last time, where he finally made it. But it's a shame. I miss him every day.
I want to go over a few more things here pertaining to the game of baseball. Then we're going to get into some players. Okay, first of all, there's 4 wild card teams. That means that 14 of 30 are in the playoffs. Is that too many?
I don't mind it. I just don't like the one game. I don't like the one game wild card. It should be at least 2 out of 3. I don't mind more teams. That's a money thing, Scott. Right. It's just they're doing that for money. But just the one game showdown to me is I don't like it. I think you got to go 2 out of 3. That's my feeling.
Well, that's okay.
You want to go 4 teams and you got to go one game and then another game. I don't like it. I go 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I agree. I am. But it is an interesting thought. The one game elimination. I don't know. I think 2 out of 3. If you're going to go after the money, most you go with it all the way to squeeze another couple potential games. So I'm right there with you. Sometimes a lot of team sports like to go as many as 50 to 60% because obviously it's a money thing that's dominating these days. So on to the next thing. Size of the roster. Under the old format, they had 25-man roster. This year going the 26th through August, and then in September they go. The old system was 40 down to 28 here in 2020 with a maximum of 14 pitchers. You've been talking about pitchers a lot, so do you think these are good changes in terms of roster size?
Yeah, 14's plenty. You very rarely use 14. 12 probably. I mean, I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it's I think it's a pretty good move. I like it when they go to the 40-man roster because if you're at the end of the year and you're out of the race, you can bring kids up that you think may help you next year and play them.
Good point.
If you're out of the race, play them. And if you've already clinched the pennant and you're going to lose somebody to free agency next year, you've got somebody you can. Let's look at him now. Let's look at him now at the end of the year and see if he can replace this guy, or we're going to have to spend some more money to keep him. So yeah, I think when you expand a roster is always good.
So are you opposed to the new system at 28 then?
No, I think wrong with that. I think 20 is fine.
28, okay.
And 14 pitchers, and I think you got to keep 3 catchers. I really think you got to keep 3 catchers. Sometimes they only keep 2, and then somebody that can catch. And in the NHL they keep 2 goalies, and they got to bring somebody out of the Zamboni to be the reliever. And that was crazy.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I thought that was cute, but yeah, no, I like the 28. I like that.
All right, well, since you're in the Tampa area, obviously it's an area known for a breeding ground for players. We're going to limit this to you because we know how many players have come out of there. Tell me the best players that you've ever coached that have gone on to be in the major leagues. I know Tampa's a gold mine for prospects. And then we're going to get into the obvious Tampa guy that we both know we're going to bring up near the end.
The best guy I ever coached that made the big leagues was Lenny Faedo, but guy right behind him, I only had Lenny for 14 games in the summer before he got drafted. But I coached a guy all summer named Mike Heath. That was a catcher with the Yankees and then with the A's. And Mike and Barry Schallenberg was the head coach, and I was assistant. Barry became the head coach at Alabama eventually. But our brilliance, we had him. He was shortstop in high school. We thought maybe he would end up playing third at the next level, but they took him, and I think he played shortstop for 2 weeks, and they put him behind the plate, made him a catcher. He became a really good catcher. He wasn't as good as Faedo. Faedo played for me when he was 17. in the summer, and at 19 he was a starting shortstop for the Twins. And some of the bad things that happened to him, he had a long career in the big leagues. He probably is the best player ever. He had 4 home runs in a doubleheader for me once.
Wow!
And they walked him with the bases loaded one time intentionally, and I've never seen that before. He's probably the best I've coached.
Okay, let's talk about let's talk about Fred McGriff, the most obvious person on the planet. I believe he belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think he's definitely an individual that should be there, not there. Who knows when he'll ever get there, hopefully through the veterans. But what are your thoughts about Fred McGriff?
Yeah, I'm surprised at that. I don't know what you have to do to be in the Hall of Fame. I went to school with his brother. His older brother and I are the same age, and there's a lot of difference between Fred. Fred was a little guy, and he went to Jefferson. I went to Plant because there was no Jefferson at the time. Then they built Jefferson, and Fred went there, and he's just a great guy. He, I don't know if you know this, he did not make the Jefferson team as a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
He had a little problem with swinging the bat, and he came as a junior, and Pop Cuesta had him, but that year Frank Vermeulen was Pop's assistant. Frank was an assistant coach at Pop, and Frank was a great left-handed hitter as a kid, and he got Fred and changed him a little bit, and Fred couldn't sniff a left-hander. And when Frank got a hold of him, you remember Fred, he didn't have any problem hitting lefties in the big leagues. And I can tell you one thing, Frank really had a lot to do with that. But Frank made him a great hitter in high school, and then, of course, he got better and bigger, and he was a little bit awkward, but I think he should be. I should think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's great defensive first baseman, had power, hit for average. Didn't have to platoon him against lefties. What are you going to do? I think it's a lot of politics, but I think you got to overlook that. I mean, maybe the veterans will get him in. Hopefully, he's a great kid. Comes from a great family. I don't know if you know his son played wide receiver at Jesuit, and then he went to Kansas and played wide receiver. I don't know how much he played. Kansas wasn't very good, so I never heard too much about him. But he went to Kansas and played wide receiver for them.
And for those individuals,
football player, he was a baseball player.
And for those individuals that want to know who Pop is, it's Pop Cuesta, one of the best coaches that ever coached in Tampa baseball. So I just want to make sure that props to Pop. Lewis had a question for you.
Not a question, but KR, I think the reason he's not in the Hall of Fame, and it's analytics aside, because you can make a case against him in that too. I think it's just one thing is that you can't really identify him with one team. Like Ricky Henderson, for example, is a major outlier. I mean, like the numbers are clearly they signify a Hall of Famer, but Ricky Henderson played for 11 teams. But you can identify him with the Yankees. You can identify him even with the Mets, but you can mostly identify him with the Oakland A's. Fred McGriff, is synonymous with the city of Tampa, and he did end his career, I believe, with the Rays. But he played for the Braves. He played for like the Padres, the Blue Jays. I mean, a myriad of teams, and more that I didn't even name. And I think that may be one reason that voters do him. The 94 strike, and Scott said this a myriad of times, and I agree, kind of killed his case at 500 home runs because he retired at 493. And if he plays, obviously that season ends in early August. If he plays the rest of the year, there's no doubt in my mind that he can hit 6-7 home runs and get there and maybe be at 501, maybe even 504 Mel Ott territory. But that those two things are what killed him. At the time when voters were really voting, especially when he first came on the ballot, round numbers, 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, those are 500 home runs. Those are benchmarks. And I think, he fell just short.
You're probably right. You're right. I'm a little prejudiced on this, and I like the kid. I think he's just a great human being, and you never see anything controversial about him. And he was very steady, a real steady first baseman. And you're probably right. He's not identifiable like you're saying, Ricky Henderson, and that probably does hurt him. So, yeah, that's probably the reason.
I agree with you. Look, I'm sorry. I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I've come around on that. It's funny, too. Like, you look at his overall body of work, you look at, metrics like OPS Plus, and while WAR favors Eddie Murray, I think they're very similar as hitters. First basemen who had a decent ability to get on base. They hit for a good amount of power. They were never going to hit 50 home runs a season, but they were kind of similar as players. They were just quiet. They did their job, and they were pretty much steady Eddie. The same thing with Fred McGriff. You kind of knew what you were going to get every year with them. but
Yeah.
some
You're right.
voters just didn't like that.
All right, so let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I identify Fred more with the Braves than anywhere else. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
He is best year.
Yeah.
But, But yeah, again, it's hard to ask a Tampa guy that really likes that. We all stick together pretty much, and we all are very loyal to each other. And he's just such a good kid, and we all of us would like to see him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no question about it. And of course, I feel pretty connected to the Tampa area because I lived there a couple of years, covered a lot of high school baseball, and dealt with a lot of you coaches. I mean, from PopQuest to yourself, and I can't obviously forget about. I think. Who's the other guy that I'm trying to refer to? Eddie Cardieri is a guy who's a very close friend of mine, too. So all you guys are, to me, like special family in a sense. Let's go over a couple more things before we wrap up the broadcast. You and I always joke around it. I had a pick of the litter when I was covering high school baseball. Jim Henry of the Tampa Tribune used to give me the pick. And obviously, I piggybacked on Tampa Chamberlain, the Speed and Lumber Company. I want you to describe to the audience what the Speed and Lumber Company was like.
Well, we really had some kids that could really run, and I come out of coaching in college at a time where the running game was a big deal. The Miamis, the Cal Fullertons, Arkansas, they would run, and I believed in it. And I remember talking to Ron Frazier and Skip Bertman when Skip was still the assistant at Miami, and talking about base running, and they really influenced me. And we ran, and in 27 games in 85, we stole 127 bases. And we had 5 guys run on their own. And so we could run. And everybody knew we were going to run. And they just couldn't stop us because we could run. I mean, we knew how to take a lead. We coached that very, very well, how to take a big lead and how to run. And we even ran lefties because we take a short lead and go on first movement. They didn't know what pitch we were going on, and they couldn't pick it up for me because I didn't give a signal to 5 guys on my team. They were running on their own. The only way they didn't run is when I stopped them. And we have some pretty good power. And we hit a bunch of home runs, and we didn't hit as many home runs as they do now because the bats weren't as live back then as they are now. But we did. I think we led the conference in home runs too. We definitely led in stolen bases, and that's where we came up with the Speed and Lumber Company. Because we could swing the lumber, which wasn't lumber, it was metal, and we could run. And every team I've ever had, we ran a lot because I had a lot of knowledge about it, which is funny because I couldn't run a lick, but I taught base running pretty well and how to we take the extra base. We never base hit to right field, guys on first base. He's running, he's looking at me at third base because we're coming. And if it's to the if it's to the left side of the center fielder, we're gonna base hit up the middle, run on first. We're coming because if he's right-handed, he's got to run all the way. If he's left-handed, he's got to cross over and turn around, and throw us out. You're gonna have to try to throw us out because we're gonna and that's amateur baseball, and you don't see that at the big league level too much because the guys have cannons. High school they don't, and we're gonna run and run and run. So I guess that's where that name came from.
But it was a good name.
It did have some speed.
Well, I love the name.
Our leadoff hitter stole 30. Our number 2 hitter was Jay Gruden. He stole 30. Our number 3 hitter stole 24. Our 4th hitter was Ken Hagan, who's a county commissioner now. He didn't run, but he still stole about 9 bases that year. He had 419. The guy that ran for him stole 27 bases. Okay, then our 6th hitter was our DH. He couldn't run very well. But then our 7th hitter was our right fielder. He could fly. He stole 27 bases. And their 8th and 9th hitters weren't great hitters, but they could both run. They stole, 10, 12, 15 apiece. So we stole against Jefferson one time against Pop. I think we stole 15 bases in a game, 12, I think it was maybe 12. And the first inning, we would lead the game off a lot with base hit, steal second. Gruden comes up. Gruden's second hitter, he gets a base hit, he steals second. Murray comes up, he gets a base hit, he steals second. We'd be up 2-0 on the first 3 hitters with 3 base hits because we could run. So, and we did, and we ran. And if you pitched out, we're running the next pitch after a pitch out.
All right.
Because you're not going to double pitch it out. The only guy who ever double pitched out me was Frank Vermeer because he knew I was running. He knew we were running after, and he just took a chance and he double pitched and threw us out. which is one of the few times he got to run all year.
Do you ever stay in touch with Jay Gruden? And if you need to find him, he's with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes, I knew that. I have not talked to Jay, and if you were supposed to go see him when they played an exhibition game here in Tampa when he was with the Redskins, and I never could get down to the field. I didn't have any connections to get down there, which is amazing. I lived in Tampa all my life, and I didn't have any connections to get down there. I wanted to see him because Kenny Hagan, our county commissioner here at Tampa, or him, are very good friends, and they communicate, but he doesn't get to see him that much either. But hopefully I can see him. He's one of my favorite guys. He's a heck of a high school baseball player. He went to Louisville, played quarterback, and I remember telling one of their assistants, I said, he could play baseball too, because we're not going to let him play though. And he could have been All-American in baseball as a left fielder. He could hit. He didn't hit with power. He was a spray hitter, but he could run. Good fielder. Didn't have a great arm, believe it or not. Had a great arm in football. He didn't have a great arm in baseball, but that's why he played left field. But he came up as a shortstop with me, but he couldn't play shortstop in the left field. But we ran, and the team I had the year after wasn't very good, but we ran, and all my summer teams ran like crazy. I had a kid steal 7 bases in a doubleheader once in a Legion game. In fact, he was looking for a scholarship, didn't get one. We were playing Lou Garcia's team, who became the coach at HEC, and a very good friend of mine. At the end of the game, he told me, he goes, I have a scholarship left. I want that kid. His name was Johnny Gray. He said, can he run like that? I said, Lou, he runs every time he gets on base, he's gone. I said, he can just flat out fly. And he went and played baseball at Hillsborough Community College. So, yeah, we always, and kids that couldn't run real well would still teach them how to take big leads and go on and read the pitcher. And that's a key to stealing. You steal the base on the pitcher, not on the catcher.
Okay, and finally, since you're in Tampa, you definitely made your rounds around the Tampa baseball scene. You coach at USF. By the way, I'm wearing a USF shirt and a hat, just so you want to know. Hillsborough Community College. I think you were at Tampa Spartans too, weren't you? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was assistant with Frank Premier for 3 years. Tampa was my first college job.
All right, so you got Tampa, you got USF, Hillsborough Community College, and Tampa Chamberlain. When you summarize the Tampa rounds, give us your best memories and describe your entire experience dealing in an area where you've seen prospects come from all levels, from the college to the high schools, as we wrap up the broadcast.
Well, you're going to get great. Back when I was coaching junior college, I was going to be coaching waiting at HEC, and things didn't work out that way due to some. We'll be here forever to talk about that. But the fun part is you could just recruit Tampa back then and be great because there's so many good players. Kids aren't going the junior college route anymore. They're going right away because they playing more games. And JCs are getting the also-rans. Back in the old days, a lot of four-year schools won't recruit kids out of high school because they didn't think they were ready. And that was probably the most fun I ever had coaching college was the year I coached at HCC. All Tampa kids. We had one kid from out of state, but he was a walk-on. And it was just a lot of, because you knew the parents, you knew the kids. Kids play hard. Tampa, they don't like to lose. And getting kids like that together was the most fun. At Tampa, we have a whole lot of scholarships. They didn't have it like they have now. So, we had kids from up north mostly. We had a few Tampa kids. South Florida was, we just weren't in a really good situation at the time, and I could go on forever about that, and I don't want to. But HCC was probably my most fun. I knew I was going to be the head coach there one day. I mean, I was supposed to be, and I knew I was going to be able to recruit. And we were recruiting really, really well in the area. In fact, we recruited 2 years in advance. We had gotten kids to come, and we would open our batting cage on Sunday, and kids from all over the county would come and hit our batting cage on Sunday. And they were coming. We didn't. It was perfectly illegal because they were coming. We were opening the cage and just letting them hit, and we were standing there watching them. And we'd see kids that were sophomores, and we'd be making little notes on them, and they'd come and talk to us, and then we talked to their parents. So we had recruiting set for years in advance. And we were going to be a big-time junior college power, and things didn't work out. Lou Garcia left at the end of the year, and it's just a long story. But that was probably the most fun I ever had.
All right, well, KR, I want to thank you very much for being on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk Around the Horn. It's been a pleasure going over some of our old times together. I enjoy working with you, and I enjoy having you on the program every time the situation presents itself. Louis, any final thoughts?
No, thanks for the talk today, KR. I really like hearing some of your insights on that stuff. I love to hear, regional guys give their story, and definitely had a great time talking to you today, so it was a blast.
All right, KR,
Always fun buddy.
Well, I'll look forward to I look forward to seeing you when I come back to town. Okay, KR.
We'll get together for an adult beverage.
You better believe we will. All right, KR. Thanks a lot for giving us some of your Sunday, and look forward to seeing you and talking to you real soon. Thank you, KR.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.